Hello, everybody. This is my Teachers' Day special, and let me begin by wishing all my fellow teachers a very happy Teachers' Day. And then let me give you some good news. And the good news is, and I'm talking to school teachers, primary, secondary, high school teachers. The good news is that your jobs are now redundant. And you can go and relax on the beaches of Bahamas or wherever else you like to relax, because what you do is not necessary anymore. Interestingly, it wasn't necessary for the last 25 years either, maybe even more. I would risk even saying 50 years, but definitely not for the last 25 or 30 years. What you do, what you teach, has been redundant. The world hasn't or didn't wake up to that fact. The world is mostly not woken up to that fact even now to some extent, but we are getting there. The reason I'm saying that, and what I'm going to say, I'm sure there will be some teachers, some schools to which this doesn't apply, and all power to you. We need to replicate you and get more and more like yourselves. But for the vast majority of people, let's see what schooling really does to children and for children. In a school, a typical school, and this is sadly the situation practically everywhere in the world, or at least wherever I've been to. A typical school is as close to a jail or a prison as you can get without having committed a crime. And that's what makes it even worse, because at least there is a reason why a person is in jail, because they are paying for and they are being punished for something they did. But the poor child is getting it for nothing. Suspension of all freedom, no freedom to communicate, no freedom of action, no freedom of choice, gates shut after you come in, you cannot leave until the gates open again, you can't eat when you want, you can't sleep when you want, you can't play when you want, you can't study when you want. You must study when you are told, you must eat when you are told, you must play when you are told, you must sleep when you are told, and to the extent that you can't even go to the toilet without having to suffer the indignity of standing up and asking for permission to go to the toilet. How many of you remember the sign or this sign? And that's schooling. Classes segregated on the basis of date of manufacture, also called date of birth. Seating in the most efficient way to destroy all communication between students, which is classroom seating. Everyone facing forwards, which means that from the second row to the last row, the children are exposed to the most inspiring picture of the back of somebody's head. Knowledge from original books is dumbed down into textbooks, is further dumbed down into notes, which are then expected to be written out again by the students, and then memorized and regurgitated, unprocessed, undigested in what we call examinations. And those who pass those examinations, doors open for them into further areas of study, into their college and university education. This we have given the name of education. This is what we have given the name of schooling. I can go on, but I won't. The whole system is based on the presumption that students and children cannot make choices, that they are not responsible enough to make choices, and therefore responsibility cannot be given to them. It's based on the presumption that the best way to acquire what we like to call knowledge, which is really discrete pieces of unrelated data, information, is to get it through somebody, not because you wanted it, but because they thought you needed it, and then to memorize it and to regurgitate it. This is what education stands for. There is no focus whatsoever on even trying to understand how these bits and pieces of discrete knowledge that we get are related to each other. They are related, believe it or not, but we are never shown that relation. For example, how many of us have heard of Pythagoras' theorem? How many of us have heard of Archimedes' principle? And how many of us in school were told the applications of that in real life? And to make to the cherry on top of this whole cake is the fact that this schooling of which amounts usually to about 15 years, if you take the 12 years from grade 1 to grade 12, plus the 2 or 3 years of primary and pre-primary, of this 15 years is supposed to prepare you for the world into which you will enter after school. Seriously, I request you to ask yourself this question and say, and my question is, show me one subject that actually prepares a student to go out into the world and deal with it. Do we teach them about money? How to earn it, how to spend it, how to budget? Do we teach them about politics, what it is, how it functions? Do we teach them about handling conflict? Do we teach them about respecting diversity? Do we teach them about difference, and that difference is not negative, but difference is difference? It's interesting, it is wonderful that we should learn about each other and that we are different, and it's so wonderful that we are different. Do we teach them self-defense? Do we teach them how to interact with people from other cultures, other societies, other religions, other communities, other nationalities? Do we teach them how to find their way in a city, how to find their way in a forest? Do we teach them how to light a fire? Do we teach them how to cook food? Do we teach them what is good to eat and what's not good to eat if you are in a forest and you have no food? Do we teach them about water, water conservation, which is one of the major problems in the world today? Do we teach them about global warming, how we can make our own contribution to preventing that or slowing it down? I can go on ad infinitum. I'm not going to do that. I think this list is enough. Do we teach them these things? And if we do not teach them these things, then how on earth do we believe that this education is doing anything worthwhile for them? I often say this to when I talk to groups of teachers, and even more importantly to groups of parents. I ask them a question first. I tell them that if I tell you that I studied full-time 15 years a particular subject or a particular area of research, and I did that for 15 years, what would that make me? It would make me an expert. I tell them that take your child who finally graduates grade 12, and this child has studied fantastically well, and the child has graduated now with full honors. Once the child has come out of the graduation ceremony in the school, bring them home and tell them, now go away for 1 month, stay on your own, not with friends, not with relatives, on your own for 1 month, earn your living, look after yourself, and after 1 month, come back home. What do you think will happen? I seriously suggest you do not do this. But if you did it, what would happen? You would lose a child. As simple as that. That child is not coming back. That child is gone for good. That child would have got trafficked. That child would have got killed. That child would have got kidnapped. I don't know what. And that is after you spent for a full-time education for 15 years. The school owners made money. Teachers made money. You spent your money, Mr. and Mrs. Parent. Everybody benefited. All the school employees made money. Everybody benefited at the expense of that child who got nothing at the end of 15 years. Find me one child who reads their textbooks after they finish the schooling, who even goes back to the textbooks and says to themselves or to you, that this physics was such a fantastic subject. I really love physics. I really didn't read that textbook well enough in school. I want to now that I've graduated, I've got some time, I want to really go and read physics. Almost nobody. This is schooling. I wanted to go into the description of this video and click on the first link. It's a TED Talk by Dr. Sugata Mitra. And he talks about this experiment that he did called Hole in the Wall. What he did was very simple and completely insane, if you ask me. There was a hole in a wall next to his office which separated the office from a slum in Delhi, New Delhi. So Sugata Mitra stuck a PC, a computer, into that hole, and on the other side he put a touchpad, a mouse, and hooked it up with a high-speed internet connection. So a few kids gathered. Now these are slum children, they have never been to school, they don't know English, not one word. They had never seen a computer in their lives. They had no clue about what the internet is. They have no clue about what a mouse is. They had no clue about anything. So, some novelty, something new. So they came and they said, what is this? So Dr. Mitra says, this is a computer. He said, well, what can it do? He said, I don't know. Can we touch it? He said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And he walked away. That's it. Now he had cameras installed there to see what was happening. He came back after a bit of time, and I will ask you first to guess how long do you think it took. But he came back after some time, and to his great amazement, he saw these children browsing the net. So they had managed to access the internet, and they were browsing the net, and they were actually teaching each other how to operate that browser and how to search for things on the internet. Once again, never been to school, don't know English, never seen a computer in their lives. So if I ask you now, my teacher colleagues especially, that I have a friend who does not know English, who's never been to school, who's never seen a computer in his life, and I want you, the computer expert, the IT engineer, the whatever, to teach them how to use the computer and browse the net, how long do you think you need? How many hours? How many days? Give yourself an answer. You know how long it took those kids? Dr. Sugata Mitra says in the TED Talk, it took them 6 hours. 6 hours. Not 6 days, 6 hours. In 6 hours, children who had no knowledge of English, who had never seen a computer in their lives, who had not been to school, slum children, were browsing the net on that computer. Completely untaught, no teacher, no nobody. Self-taught, self-directed learning. We have nice words, except we don't use them. So therefore, what is the role of the teacher? Zero, redundant. Let me give you some good news as well. Having said that, I'm saying that also to wake up those who are asleep. The role of the teacher has not become redundant as in completely dead and gone, but the role has changed in such a way that teaching in the way that we have been doing, teaching in the way that we have been used to, is dead and gone and redundant, and it must change. Now, how must it change? Now, here's my solution. First and foremost, reduce the span of schooling from 12 years to 7 years. Save yourself 5 years of time and 5 years of money. In those 7 years, teach 3 things. First and foremost, the most important, teach them values. Why values? Because values drive behavior and behavior drives results. Teach them values. Values cannot be legislated, values must be inculcated, and therefore values can only be taught by teachers who have values. So make sure you've got the right kind of teachers who believe in the right values. What are the right values? Number one, integrity, honesty, delivery of quality, a sense of pride in the work that they do. So, integrity. Number two, kindness, compassion, being kind to people, being kind to animals, being kind to the earth, being kind to each other. Kindness and compassion. Third one is truthfulness. Believe me, truthfulness seems to have gone out of fashion. It hasn't. Lying and cheating is bad for you, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for everybody. No matter how much it seems to have become the fashion, it is evil, it is toxic. So, truthfulness, integrity, kindness, truthfulness. I think these three values, call them by whichever name you want. These are the three primary values that must be taught by demonstration to every single living child. The second thing that we need to teach them is literacy and numeracy. Teach them numbers, and by numbers I am not talking about advanced calculus, I am talking about addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. We must be able to do some of that in our heads, even though we have access to iPhones and Siri and whoever else, and you don't want to go there and say, well, 8 times 4 is what? 8 times 4 is 32, and that's something must come out of the head. So, numbers and reading and writing. Why these two? Because these are the two doors. These are the two doors to practically every single kind of knowledge that exists. It can either be read or it is something that you need to calculate. So therefore you need numbers, numeracy and literacy. And third thing is, give them a skill. Give them a skill which they can use, which they can do with their hands. Carpentry, plumbing, electrician, electrical engineering, call it what you want, but something to do with the hands. There is a big reason for that. One is it inculcates dignity of labor. It's good brain-hand coordination. It helps you in many different ways. It is stress relieving. It's relaxing. It's to actually create something with your hands, to fix something, to fix a problem. All of this is hugely beneficial for the person psychologically. And then I'm coming to why that. So, three important things: values, numeracy and literacy, and skill. And then do this in a period of 7 years. It's more than enough. Our school timetables and curricula can accommodate this very easily, and it must be done in every single school of every single kind, whether it's a theological madrasa, whether it's a pathshala, whether it's a seminary, whether it's a secular school, any kind of school. These are the three things that must be focused on and taught. Forget about teaching textbooks. Now, second part, as far as subjects are concerned, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, botany, zoology, history, geography, all of these together, teach them using what I call the project method. The project method, those of you who are interested in more detailed stuff on this, look at my lectures on integrated teaching. But I'm going to describe that briefly right here. The project method consists of this. It is as follows. Take a project, mountains. You have a class which is mixed ages, because this is how human beings learn. In your home, you don't segregate your children saying to the 2-year-old, you will not talk to your 5-year-old sister. You will not say to the 5-year-old, you will not talk to your 10-year-old brother. On the other hand, you will tell the 10-year-old brother, look after your 2-year-old sister. This is how human beings live. This is how human beings function. In schools, we have changed the way we live and function by segregating children on the basis of date of manufacture. This is completely ridiculous, but we have been following that from the time of the Industrial Revolution, the 1740s. High time it changed. So, classes comprised of children of multiple ages. And then those classes will also have subject experts, which are teachers in the different subjects. Now you're studying mountains. You're not studying physics, you're not studying chemistry, you're studying mountains. Now in the subject of mountains, you're going to study physics, with reference to mountains. You're going to study chemistry with reference to mountains. You're going to study biology, you're going to study zoology, you're going to study botany, you're going to study plant and animal species, you're going to study the geophysics of mountains, you're going to study the fact that the issue of minerals, you're going to study what happens when you climb a high mountain. Why is it that you start needing oxygen at some point in time if the mountain is high enough? You're going to study how mountains affect the weather, how mountains affect rainfall, how mountains become a barrier between one area and another area, where because of the mountain you have a windward or and a leeward side, where the windward side gets all the rain, the leeward side is a desert. You're going to study all of these things, all the different subjects. You're going to study how to calculate the weight of a mountain. You're going to study how to calculate the height of a mountain without carrying a string with you all the way to the top. All of this stuff you are going to study relating to mountains, all the subjects together. The benefit of this is that by doing that, there is a practical orientation toward the subjects, and you understand how the subjects link with one another. You will understand how the physics of the mountain affects the chemistry, how the chemistry affects the history of nations, how the history of nations is affected because of the geography of the nation which had the mountain range, which prevented invaders from coming into the country, into this part of the world, because they had to go over this mountain range which was impregnable, which was impossible to cross until someone discovered a way to do that, and so on and so forth. So you will see two important things. One is you will see the practical application of knowledge, and the second one is you will see how this knowledge is related to each other. Believe me, try this method and you would be amazed at how interesting it becomes. Now, what's the role of the subject experts? The role of the subject experts is not to give answers. The role of the subject experts, the teachers of physics and chemistry and biology and mathematics and whoever is in that room, their role are two roles. One is hygiene, safety of the children, ensure that there is no bullying and so on and so forth. Number two is to ask the right questions. You are not there to give answers. You are there to ask the right questions. Did you think of this? Did you calculate that? What do you think will happen if you do this? If the child asks you a question, turn it back to the child. And then let them go do the research. They have access to internet. They have access to high-speed connections. They can actually, for example, talk to the astronauts in the International Space Station and ask them for data concerning a particular mountain range when they fly over that, because they are going very fast around the Earth. They can look at weather systems as they are moving and they come close to the Himalayas, for example, and what's happening with the monsoon winds when they're coming up close to the Himalayas. Let me talk to the astronaut on the International Space Station and say, can you please send us photographs of that when these heavy moisture-laden winds, when they hit the mountain wall and they rise up, what is it that is happening? Can you send us pictures of what happens in the Amazonian basin when the rain falls and the water comes, which is loaded with nutrients, and it hits the ocean, where the diatoms are waiting for those nutrients, and then the diatoms are producing oxygen, which we are breathing. Now, these are the kinds of things that can be done in a class. And believe me, all of this stuff can be done with exactly the amount of technology we have today, no extra cost. All it needs is imagination. All it needs is the willingness to think of life differently. Third part, which is the skill with the hands. The reason for that is because I believe that we are moving more and more into a world where traditional employment is also getting redundant. Thanks to artificial intelligence, for example, IBM Watson gives you, in the legal profession, IBM Watson gives you answers to legal questions which would have required solicitors and solicitors' clerks days of research. IBM Watson gives that to you in seconds. In the medical profession, IBM Watson diagnoses cancer 4 times more accurately than any human being. we are moving more and more to a highly automated world. Anything that can be automated will be automated. So therefore, we need to create, if we are creating children, or if you're creating the output of our schools and colleges, if it results finally in the student standing in a line looking for a job, then we have not done our job. We do not want to create employees. We want to create employers. How do you do that? By developing entrepreneurship. Where does it start? It starts with a skill. So if my child learns plumbing, don't say, well, I'm a multi-billionaire and why would my child want to be a plumber? This is the mentality that must change first. If that question is coming in your mind, there's something, your mind is sick. You might need to get that out of your mind and say that there is dignity in labor. Everybody is necessary. Wait until your sink gets blocked and you know exactly how valuable a plumber is. So now we come to the issue of saying that if my child becomes a plumber, he doesn't have to spend the rest of his life under a kitchen sink. He can start a plumbing company. There is a wonderful company which is based on an app called Urban Clap, which does exactly this. They have plumbers and carpenters and electricians and air conditioning mechanics, and so on and so on. Including they've got somebody who will come and drive a nail in your wall to hang a painting if you want that. And this is in India, and for that they charge 49 rupees. Round it off to 50 rupees. The dollar right now is about 70 rupees. So you're looking at about 70 cents or so to drive one nail into your wall. This person comes and you might say, well, why do I want the guy? You want the guy because you don't know how to drive a nail. If you do it badly, you will have a big patch in the wall. You need someone who comes with a drill and drills a hole and puts a plug in it, and then he puts a nail into that. Very neat, clean job. He comes in a uniform, he has a name tag, he comes, he's polite, he's trained to behave properly, and any debris that results out of the work, he cleans it and takes it away. This is a multi-billion rupee business. Now, the point I'm making is that at the end of this schooling, the child must come out of there with a marketable skill. I just gave you the example of carpentry and plumbing. There are hundreds of skills that you can teach. It doesn't have to be only this. The child must come out with a marketable skill. And then those children who are interested, and I would assume that most of them, if not all of them, would be interested, you help them to set up a business by creating small venture capital funds. Now, these venture capital funds, again, we are not talking about millions of dollars, we are talking about small amounts of money, which you give to them and they then set themselves up in business. We like to talk about entrepreneurship. We like to talk about freedom. Give them that, teach them that. Now, in the schools, when we teach like this, and when we teach these subjects on a project basis, I mentioned to you about the use of money. You can have a project called cities, for example, where you teach them all about how democracies are run, how about local governments, all about local governments, how they are run, all about how money, how the system works, the evils of the current interest-based banking system, which is driving the economy and which is what is behind all these peaks and slumps that we get over and over again. It's amazing. How is it that from the 1930s onwards, from the Great Depression up to now, we haven't figured out how to avoid these peaks and slumps? The only conclusion that you can come to is that peaks and slumps happen because it's benefiting somebody. It's not benefiting you, it's benefiting somebody else. Now, how do you do that? And that's where we must ensure that our children learn these things right in school. Teach them through projects, imagine the project, let them work on it, and then you ask them the right questions. And the rest of it, they research and do that. So teach values, teach through projects by teaching them literacy and numeracy, and then teach through projects, give them real life skills. And the third one is give them a way to earn their living. Give them the dignity of standing on their own feet. Teach them a marketable skill, open the door for them to set up their own business. Now, this is what I mean by education. This is what we need to do, and all of this can be done in a period of 7 years. Of 7 years from grade 1 to grade 7. That's all that's required. Save yourself the time, save yourself the money. Once again, happy Teachers' Day to all of you. It's time for us to sit down and think and say, what is it that we can do to change around this education, to create a society of people who are kind and compassionate, people who are responsible, truthful, people of integrity, people who stand on their own feet, who are entrepreneurial, who not only don't go and ask for jobs, but who create jobs for themselves and for others. Tell me, doesn't this sound nice? Anybody is allergic to that? If you're not allergic to that, let's get up and do it. All the best to you, and thank you very much for watching.